Welcome to SEFAA Soundbites, your quick pulse on all things multifamily, brought to you by the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. The Southeast Florida Apartment Association podcast and the views and information shared in this episode are provided solely for general guidance, informational, and educational purposes only, primarily for professionals in the multifamily housing industry. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. This podcast does not constitute legal, financial, or operational advice. Listeners should follow their own company's policies and standard operating procedures, and, when needed, seek professional counsel before acting on any topic discussed. So, grab your coffee, plug in, and let's get prepared. This is SEFAA Soundbites.
Hello, my name is Deborah Coleman. Our team at ResCore AAA Supply is proud to sponsor this episode of SEFAA Soundbites. When it comes to appliances and air conditioning, there are many suppliers to choose from. In today's market, the challenge is not what you buy, it's how and from whom you buy it. When you partner with ResCore, you get much more than the best brands in the market. You receive attentive and knowledgeable service from the best professionals in the industry. With decades of experience, our team members are always a phone call, email, or text message away. Our commitment to quality and personalized service sets us apart from the competition. Whether you need to replace, repair, or renovate your appliances and HVAC systems, we can deliver. Please give us a chance to earn your business. Mention SEFAA Soundbites for a special introductory offer. Here's to another amazing episode of SEFAA Soundbites, sponsored by ResCore.
Budget season is upon us, and for multifamily professionals, the decisions made today can have a major impact on next year's success. Welcome back to SEFAA Soundbites, the official podcast of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. I'm your host, Sara Henderson, 2026 SEFAA Past President. Today, we're talking about all things budgets, bottom lines, and making numbers work. We'll also discuss upcoming membership renewals, valuable SEFAA resources, and practical ways to stretch your budget farther. Joining us today are our special guests, Patrick Lewis and Erin Beardsley, who will help us break down the trends and forecasts multifamily professionals should be watching as they prepare for the year ahead. I'm going to take a moment to let each guest introduce himself. Patrick?
Hey, everybody. It's Patrick Lewis, your 2026 SEFAA President and the Senior Regional Director for Florida at AvalonBay Communities.
And Erin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Beardsley, and I am the Vice President of Asset Management for the Milestone Group, and I appreciate being asked to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you both and the time that you've given to us today. So let's dive in. This is SEFAA Soundbites. So as we get ready to go into budget season and you open the SEFAA budget planning spreadsheet, Patrick, what's the first thing that you focus on?
Well, first of all, it's a great tool to set yourself up for success, to know the expenses that go into your membership dues, the event participation, and anything that you need to do to plan for the year, what events you're going to go to, what activities you're going to be participating in. Plug it into the tool. It gives you the outputs so you can take it to whatever budgeting software you're using at your company and get the best information out of it.
Absolutely. I know Bozzuto really loves that tool as well, and it's something we really value during this time of year. And Erin, from an asset management perspective, and we love to have that perspective today, how does reforecasting in your current year's budget help you make and change decisions going into last year's budget?
So I think that one of the best things that you can do with regard to reforecasting is be honest with your ownership groups and truly let them know what those expenditures are going to look like moving forward throughout the year. And then that does allow you to prepare for next year's budgets. A lot of times, and that coming from a property management background, I totally understand this. I was an operator for 20 plus years before I went to the dark side of asset management and ownership groups. A lot of times we're afraid to talk about those items that can be really substantial because we worry that our ownership groups aren't going to want to do it. But I think as property managers, it's our job to ensure that our ownership groups understand the impact of the projects that are really needed in order for your property to be successful. And right now in our current day and market that we're in, rent growth isn't always the name. Right? And so you have to be able to get ahead and learn how to create value for your properties. And sometimes you have to reforecast what that value is going to look like. You may have thought you were going into the year and you were going to get a 3 to 5% rent growth for the year. And suddenly you realize we're in the negative. And so what are those things that you're going to need in order for that value creation to be, to the positive? And so reforecasts are super important, not just on the expense side, but also on the income side.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think about with our budgets where if we've seen a downturn on the income side or rent growth, that we also look at ways that we could maybe cut expenses and say, well, we wanted to plan a project for this year that we may have to postpone to next year, or look at projects that unfortunately we cannot postpone for safety or life safety issues, but where we can put those in tandem so that we can have a successful current year going into our next year.
Right.
As well.
And sometimes it's about projects where you've got a little bit of an older property, your subfloors are looking really bad and people are coming in, walking vacant units, you're not getting the leases that you need. And so you've got to be able to put that out there to your ownership groups and say, hey, listen, it's going to cost us $2,000 to fix this subfloor, but we're going to offset that by having 2 months less vacancy loss. And so those reforecasts can really help you define that for your ownership groups as well.
What do you guys think is the most common budgeting mistake that multifamily professionals make? Patrick, we'll start with you.
I think it's really not knowing what you're spending. So you can't go into a new year of budget planning until you know where you are. And for me and in my role in my company, it's variance reports. And so whether you're in third party or you're owner operated company like I work for, you have to know where you are currently. And that's doing a deep dive, not only in expenses, but also knowing your revenue. What ORR opportunities do you have? Where can you make adjustments as you go throughout the year? And then those variance reports become the biggest tool that I use to help manage my portfolio, but also to go into budget planning sessions to know, what's been happening this year and how do we either course correct as we go ahead or what sticks into the next year's budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin, what do you think from your perspective on the asset side?
Yeah, so budgets are business plans. They're not wish lists. And so I think a lot of times you get a budget put in front of you that has every wish list item that every property manager would love to see have happen on their property. And what it really needs to be about is planning that budget and planning that value creation from an ownership perspective for people who are looking at the property to buy, to purchase from an investment point of view. It's all about the dollar that you're creating to create more value for the property, because ownership groups, you have some that sit on properties for 10 to 15 years. You have some that are fund driven and they're only looking at a 5 to 7 year hold before they're selling it because their funds mature. And so a lot of times those budget planning opportunities look like, oh, we would love to have a second pool on the property, or I'm exaggerating, but being a little bit more wish list versus being an absolute need for the property. And then understanding that you have to explain what you're putting in the budget. Your notes are so important. And a lot of these budget planning tools that are utilized now don't include notes. And you're sending these budgets back to your ownership groups. And all we're doing is going, that's 8% over last year. And I don't know why that's 8% over last year. So we're just going to take that back to where we were last year and maybe get a little 1 or a 2% bump. But the fact is, if you were to give me great notes and say, this is what I need and this is why I need it, and please understand that this is essential to the property with wonderful, beautiful notes, then it's going to merit discussion and you're not just going to get a red line budget back at you. So don't sandbag your budgets and have great notes.
If I could jump back in on the notes, I threw out the phrase variance reports, and I think every company maybe looks at a variance report and may speak about them differently. And it is the notes. The notes are the important piece of a variance report. We can see what the differentials are in the actual numbers. You need the story behind each one of those line items to understand how to make the decisions moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too for doing those capital locks on your property, right? And understanding, because in some cases I have a community that went through a lock change this year of electronic locks, and we were able to show the client though that the lock that we had today is being discontinued. So we will come to a point in the next 3 years that those locks will no longer be serviceable. So if we start now and we budget over a 5-year period of, okay, we can do 3 buildings, 3 buildings, 3 buildings, we will no longer be in a place where it's, oh my gosh, I have to do this right now. And so we understand the technology that we have and the needs that we have, and the technology is changing. And so that can be the hard part about not having a hard key and going and leading into technology. But with that, understanding it and being able to explain it to the client and help them understand. And we had some really great foresight with that, with trying to handle the tariffs in a different way. So we actually went ahead and ordered all the locks in 1 year so that we wouldn't continue to pay any tariff overcharges on that. So,
and you get the other income from the electronics
yes,
too, and that's every owner loves that.
Yes. So anytime you can tell that story is also great. So appreciate that very much. So in terms of cost saving opportunities, what do we think that managers often overlook?
I think going into budget season and just doing status quo is the biggest mistake that any operator or manager can do. You have to look at everything in detail. We build great relationships with our supplier partners. We have a great network with SEFAA members and FAA members, but we have to look at things holistically and say, are there services, are there things that we're putting into our communities that just don't make financial sense anymore? And you do have to make those difficult decisions because we do spend a lot of time building relationships with suppliers, but you have to come down to what your role is, and that's the asset preservation and producing results for your company. And sometimes that means you got to look at different things around your communities and take things out that don't make sense or rebid to get a better price. So looking at your budget and seeking out every opportunity is most critical.
That's great. All year long, you should be budget planning, right? Like budget planning isn't just because it's budget season. Budget planning should be all year long. So you have vendors that you have comfortable relationships with. And I mean, I had it. I had paint vendors I'd worked with for 10 years and was like, oh, they're my favorite. They'll do anything I need them to do. But they knew that too, right? And so if I didn't go out and rebid those paint vendors or those turn vendors, or I didn't talk to other landscapers or think about what's my capital plan for this year and next year and the year following that, then I wasn't doing the planning that I needed to do, right? We should be budget planning all year long. We should be competitively bidding our vendors all year long. And it's hard. Everybody's doing a million different things, but if you're continuing to do it throughout the year and not waiting until the last second for budget season, then you're prepared to go in and just write your business plan versus like tearing your hair out and trying to find 2 or 3 more vendors to give you a bid at that last minute. And those vendors know that too. Like they know that you're in budget season, so they're not going to put a lot of thought into it. Whereas if you're prepping them, preparing them, letting them know, hey, every year I bid my paint turns out. Every year I bid my cleaning costs out. Every year I bid my landscaping vendors out. Then they'll know that you are truly looking for the most competitive pricing and the best product.
Absolutely. Well, you guys lead to a great segue. On July 30th, we have the SEFAA trade show. And what a great way to meet some new suppliers that are either new to our location here in South Florida or are looking to build their relationship with the management companies that are here in South Florida. We've seen a large growth in supplier membership this year, which has been really exciting. So, Patrick, how has the trade show been effective for you in the past with your budgeting?
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to see everybody at the Broward Convention Center on July 30th. I'm about to celebrate 6 years of operating at AvalonBay in Florida. And it was the participation and education we got from SEFAA. I said it in my installation address earlier this year. That's where we learned who great partners would be in this area, where we could learn who we're going to do business with. And the trade show is that exact opportunity to get out in front of different supplier partners and see what their offerings are. And it's halfway through the year. It's a great time for us to be doing it because you're getting ahead of budget planning or in it already. So what better opportunity to go and meet with other people, have different conversations. If you have a service that you're struggling with, this is an opportunity to try to see several more options, get competitive bids. And you have to take the emotional connections out of it sometimes to just go in with what is the best decision for the operation of the asset, and what gets the best long-term returns. And it's this environment that brings everyone together where you can really kind of shop around, meet new faces, meet with new people, sit down, talk about some numbers, and then take it and meet with them in the future to get a potential partnership done.
Absolutely. And I think, Erin, to your point, thinking about it all year round, SEFAA also offers a business exchange earlier in the year. So if you do, for some reason, miss the trade show, it comes back around in the spring where we have the business exchange where the management companies are actually the booth and suppliers come up to us to have those conversations and introduce themselves. So another great time of the year to go through that planning and networking so that when you are ready for your budget quotes, you've already started to make those relationships as you come throughout the year.
Trade show is also a great opportunity to meet with and see the partners you're already working with and get to see them outside of the normal day-to-day business operation. Also just take a moment to step back, celebrate with them, enjoy some time away from the communities. And I know that at AvalonBay, we bring several layers of our community team members there, and they get to see different aspects. And sometimes they come up with a great new idea and they're like, this is who I met with. What's the potential of us doing X, Y, and Z with this? Because we've charged our managers with really looking and getting creative and how can they look at things differently? And they're the ones that are usually bringing the best ideas up to the portfolio level.
Absolutely. So switching gears a little bit, Erin, do you have an example of how planning ahead created meaningful savings at one of your communities or in your portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody talks about potting, right? And they think about potting payrolls and potting, vendor efficiencies and that sort of thing. And so last year was my first year with this company, and I came right in at budget season. So that's always fun, right? And so we were thinking about it from the perspective of we have two properties that are less than a mile away from each other. So how could we make some effective payroll savings? And would it be the right thing to do for the residents and for the staff? And we were able to do that. And we saved a significant amount in payroll because we made it the role of senior property manager role and a senior service manager role. And so the staffing was able to be shared between the two properties. And one property is really big and one property is teeny tiny. So it really kind of made sense for us to be able to do some consolidation between the two sites.
I think it's a great opportunity for people to get a title change, right? We're looking for growth, and those are also great ways to do that too. So I think it helps people on a lot of different levels. It's really cool. Patrick, do you have any meaningful savings that you planned for that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that status quo. Sometimes we get in the routine of every turn is contracted out, every paint is contracted out, and do we just kind of sit back and that's the way it is? Or do we push back on our teams and say, what do we have for capacity? Obviously in the summer, we're all going 100 miles an hour, and so that's not the right time of year. But in the shoulder season, when is the right time of year? And if you can take, say, 2 paints out of that rotation, but multiply it across your entire portfolio, what's the financial impact on the budget for the entire portfolio? It can be significant. So get out of the status quo of we do X, Y, and Z, and that just always happens, to think about what are some opportunities where we can seek out some savings.
Yeah, I think that's great. So let's look a little bit in planning for what's ahead. So what economic trends should multifamily professionals be watching right now? Erin?
We are not in the greatest market, and I think everybody is aware of that. South Florida is doing a lot better than a lot of other markets are. I have quite a few different markets in my portfolio, and some of them are pretty inverted. And I think that from my perspective, at the rate treasuries are going and interest rates are going, and that we really need to be mindful that rent growth is not the only way. And really good property management groups that execute well are the way. And so looking at that trend of execution and managing to occupancy and retention, I think it's what I'm doing right now. And I think I've seen a huge difference in my portfolio because I have changed my thought process. I'm not going to go out there and get 7 and 10% rent growth. This isn't COVID anymore. We're not going to see those crazy numbers. And so changing that mindset and knowing that the better you execute, the better your NOI will be. And so that I think is a huge trend to look out for, where owners are sitting on properties because that value creation is not there right now. And so sales are scarce. New acquisitions are scarce. We're starting to see it pick up a little bit. And really the political environment has impacted that greatly because of the impact on interest rates and treasuries. And so really kind of understanding that your owners are not crazy when they say, oh, maybe we don't want to do that. There is an underlying reason for that. And it's all about that value creation. Resident retention should be just 100% at the foremost of every single decision that you're making right now, because you're going to cut your expenses because your turn costs are less. You're going to keep higher rents because they're probably already paying more than that new resident is coming in. Maybe not so much here as much, but in Miami, for sure. Kendall has a truly inverted market, and concessions are the name of the game. Those effective rents are not what they were 2 years ago. And so understanding that impact is there and you've got to make up for it somehow, and execution is the way to make up for it. Maybe you have to spend a little to gain a little occupancy. Maybe you have to talk to your ownership groups about why you think that's important. Because a lot of times you're saying in the background, because I used to do it, I wish we could do this with the landscaping because our property would look so much better, and look at the property down the street and that curb appeal is so great and they're getting more traffic. Maybe we need to think about a different way of marketing. Look at what AI is doing. Look at the direction people are going into when they're looking for an apartment. Maybe we need to start spending our dollars a little bit differently in marketing to attract the traffic. And now that supply is starting to move down, that's another trend we're starting to see. We will start to see improvements, but until those interest rates and treasuries get better, that value creation, it's not going to matter if supply is decreasing because there's not going to be movement elsewhere. So I think thinking about going back to the old school ways of thinking about, 20 years ago when it was like execution was everything and occupancy was clean. That's where we need to be right now, and closing that back door on resident retention is the way to get there.
Absolutely. I love that perspective. And something we've talked about internally with Bozzuto is focus on what's free, right? You can smile. You can stand up and greet people when they come in. You can give a really good experience, and none of that costs you anything. And it is what someone is going to remember when they come back and lease and say, Sara was really nice to me. And you know what? She called me the next day and asked how I was doing and how my cat was and, how things are. So giving that experience and truly caring about people, calling them back when you say they're going to. And sometimes you don't have an update when you call, but it's okay to just call and check in. And I think we lose sight of that. And certainly we don't love to pick up the phone the way we used to. And that's not my favorite device, but, making that difference and helping the properties stand out and understand that that's a huge differentiator, that we're going to do the follow-up. We're going to make you feel like you care and are cared about in our community. And when it comes to those renewals and making sure that we give a good experience. And even our resident appreciation day, we budget thousands of dollars to do really cool events. And we said, we can still do really cool events, but they probably don't have to cost us $5,000, right? We could probably spend $2,500 and still do something really special. And we did. And we got a lot of resident reviews, and that reputation increase has only helped our online reputation. As people come and be like, oh, that sounded really cool. Like, I want to hear more about that event that you're doing. So there's still ways to effectively do that for less money, but also being able to give a good experience.
Yeah, and really leveraging technology too, right? There's so much great technology out there that you can look at, compare, contrast, and leverage. I mean, even something as simple as telling ChatGPT to look at your website and tell you what improvements can be made to it for it to better market it. There are so many things that weren't available when I was leasing, in 1999. So it's pretty phenomenal to be able to leverage some of that. And then the analysis that you can do your homework, look at what you've got going on, look at your lease pace, I say lease pace sometimes and people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, seriously, like look that up and figure out what your lease pace needs to be, because there is something that is going to be driving the amount of leases that you get. And you have to know how much traffic you need in order to gain the leases that you need to gain. So I think the fact that we have this technology that's available to us that you can go to very quickly and ask those questions and get the information that you need, that's another direction we need to be moving into, and embracing and understanding can really give you a leg up on that execution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we refer to that as the sales funnel. And if you think back to talking about a sales funnel to your leasing associates, not even 3 or 4 years ago, you weren't having this level of conversations.
Yeah.
The amount of data that we have coming at us that we can share with our teams, we have to do something with that data. And it's how many applications are coming in, how many leads are coming into those applications. All of that's critical to know. How many leases do you need this month in order to make sure you're maintaining back to the budget,
Right.
what your occupancy and rate charges or rate values are. So it's all kind of full cycle. Everything that you said prior to this was amazing, and people should go back and listen to it again. So please don't ask me that question, because you covered it all in such great detail. The resident retention piece, so critically important. And Sara, what you added, going back to basics with our teams. Like the first half of my career was in hospitality and hotels. And I've always tried to impart that on my teams, that it's the interpersonal things that you can do that make the difference. That's why people like coming back to our communities, is because of the way our teams are making them feel. So getting up when people walk into the room, making sure your name tag's on, like this is like basic stuff, but I feel like that tends to fall to the wayside when you get busy with things. And then going back to the free, like what can you be doing to activate the communities? At our Boca Raton location, the team does a great job at bringing in food trucks consistently. And I know that was a COVID kind of thing, bringing food trucks, but they've partnered with amazing food trucks from all over the area that are coming on a consistent basis. The residents are depending on having a calendar of events to go to. It costs us nothing, and it just speaks volumes in resident retention that they just have this opportunity to grab a coffee in the morning or a pizza at night, and it's supporting a local business. So what can we do that's made free to us? And maybe sometimes we go out there and we pay for the first 10, like activate the space. Can you go out and give popsicles on a hot Saturday by the pool, get engaged with your residents, get in some FaceTime? All of that stuff is so valuably important and leads to the residents wanting to stay and continue. You don't have to go out and find new residents, and you don't need to turn apartments.
Absolutely. So guys, what do you think a listener for this podcast today, whether it's a first-time budget or maybe their 15th budget that they're writing, what's one thing an action they should take after this episode?
I'm going back to my variance reports. I'm just gonna keep saying that one. And my team, if they're listening, they're gonna be rolling their eyes, because they know when the variance report comes out, they know they have to have them completed with their notes within X amount of time. And I read it, and I read all the detail. But that's really is how Erin said that the budget is like the plan, the business plan. But what you're actually doing is what matters. You have to know what was spent, why it was spent. Do you need to prevent it from being spent in the future, or what adjustments do you need to make? But if you don't have those detailed notes, then you really it's the biggest missing piece of running your business.
I say, put your asset manager hat on. Go out there, that asset manager that you absolutely hated, who would just like needle at you and be like, I think we should do this and we should do that. And what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? Get out of your office, go walk your property from top to bottom. Look at it from an outside point of view. Don't look at it from the everyday, this is what I do point of view. Look at it from that outside point of view. What could I do to this property to take it to the next level? And what's reasonable that I can do to take it to the next level? Because like I said before, you don't want it to be like this crazy wish list. You want it to be reasonable. And then look at it from the perspective of, if I do this, will it create value? Everybody loves agreeable gray, right? That has been the color of how long, Sara? Like a while, right?
At least 15 years.
It's too dark. Look at your units. Go in there and say, does this look okay to me? Like, would I want to live in here? Is this something that I want to do? It's a simple color change. on trend for you. Go shop the newest lease up in your market. Look at that newest lease up in your market and say, what are they doing well? And how can I apply this here? And then go back, look at your budgets, and be thoughtful. Be thoughtful. It is not a rote exercise. It is a business plan that you can make big fat bonus bucks off of if you do it the right way. So do it the right way. Good notes, be thoughtful, and walk your properties.
That's great. I think I would challenge my teams to say, you see the property every day. You walk the property. You should be walking your property once a week at least. But find a buddy and go walk their property with them and let them see the things that you're not seeing every day. I hear so often as a regional on-site where someone says, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that. I walked by that 5 times. Like, because you're just on your phone, you're looking down, you're trying to finalize a checklist. But when you do it together and you get a buddy and you go walk a property, you're going to see the things that everyone else is seeing, that, oh, that landscaping probably should get watered a little more, or we should fix that broken sprinkler head that I missed. And so it's not meant to penalize you, but to really help educate you and look at that and go, we have across all of the companies that we represent, we have so many sister sites. And I think you could even phone a friend at Avalon and say, hey, do you want to have lunch? And why don't you come see my new property and show them around, right? And just be able to share some thoughtful feedback together. That those are relationships that we build through SEFAA and at our events. So I would say, again, using your budget planning spreadsheet to plan for those events for next year. Make sure that you're networking and building those relationships, because that's where you're going to be the most successful, attending these events, the trade shows, the business exchanges, the educational opportunities throughout the year, and the happy hours, right? We always love a good cocktail. So enjoy that, spend time with your friends, and enjoy being part of SEFAA with us. So that wraps up another episode of SEFAA Soundbites. A special thank you to our guests for helping us navigate the budget strategies, economic trends, and planning considerations that can help set multifamily professionals up for success in the coming year. If you like today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to SEFAA Soundbites on YouTube, or listen anytime at www.sefa.org by clicking on the podcast section under the info tab. We'd also love your feedback, so please leave a comment or share this episode with a colleague who could use a little industry inspiration. Thank you for listening. I'm Sara Henderson, and this has been SEFAA Soundbites.